Friends, welcome aboard Space Castle, where our continuing mission is to search the universe for all things nerdy. I'm your Captain DT, and I love me some Final Fantasy. The series, which first launched by Square in 1987 on the NES and Famicom, has captured the imaginations of gamers around the world for nearly 40 years. Each game introduces a brand new world, a host of new characters that inhabit and go on adventures within that world, and the series maintains a set of traditional iconography like the Chocobo, Crystals, Moogles, and this horrible piece of shit.
Ooh, is that the guy who terrorizes everyone by slowly approaching them and then killing them instantly? Ooh, I like that guy, yes.
The series exploded onto the scene as an instant classic, and it has endured as one of gaming's most beloved franchises through the combined genius and collaboration of many talented writers, musicians, and artists. Through these collaborations, some of the most recognizable and iconic bits of gaming culture have been created. Who doesn't immediately recognize the Final Fantasy theme, the victory jingle, and tracks like Aeris' theme and the Aria de Mezzo Carattere? Who amongst you couldn't immediately identify a Cactuar, a Black Mage, or Sid Highwind's airship, the Highwind? And at the center of all of this, in each game is a cast of meticulously written and designed characters that we, the player, get to control and learn about over the course of dozens or even hundreds of hours. Because each mainline entry into the Final Fantasy series is intentionally not connected to the games that come before or after it, the series has undergone some pretty wild, radical iterations as it's progressed through the years. From humble beginnings as a fairly traditional RPG centered around knights and wizards and dragons to an era of combined steampunk and science fiction and fantasy, back to more traditional fantasy fare like knights, dragons, and wizards, to an era of heavy science fiction where there's spaceships and dudes driving around in a Cadillac, and back to more traditional fantasy fare like knights, wizards, and dragons. Each game has a look and feel all its own, and with that have come some very diverse and unique character designs. Some are phenomenal, some are just okay, and some are... yeah. Let's take a look at the best and worst Final Fantasy character designs. Now, when people think of Final Fantasy character designs, their minds immediately go to Yoshitaka Amano. Born in 1952, Amano grew up surrounded by and fascinated with art. In 1967, he started working as an animator for Tatsunoko Productions, and his very first paid gig as an artist was on Speed Racer. He'd also end up as a character designer for popular and influential shows like Gotcha Man and Honeybee Hutch. He would bounce around as a freelance artist, helping shape many iconic anime and manga series, before joining up with Square in 1987 as the conceptual artist and becoming the lead character designer. However, Amano was the lead character designer and graphic artist for Final Fantasy only until 1994 after the completion of Final Fantasy VI for the SNES and the Super Famicom. Even so, he's still been responsible for the logo design of each game, he's offered consultation and initial concepts for designs, and he remains nearly synonymous with the look and feel of Final Fantasy despite not being in a lead role for nearly 30 years. The first few Final Fantasy games are relatively humble in their player character designs. The first game gets the job done well enough in that you can tell the characters apart based on the classes you select for each of them, but there's not a whole lot of personality, and there really wasn't a whole lot of room in the 8-bit era of video games for distilling down Yoshitaka Amano's designs. Some solid effort was made in Final Fantasy II to differentiate the unique, named members of the party, but then they kinda just switched back to generic characters in Final Fantasy III, recycling many of the sprites from the first game. The visual personality of the first 3 Final Fantasy games comes largely from the enemy sprites, which, for the time, were f***ing awesome. I mean, holy crap, look at the detail and style in these 8-bit sprites. It's like Square got into the dankest weed your parents had hidden in the back of their closet in 1987, chased it with a case of expired Bud Light, had a crazy f***ing night of drawing all these enemy and boss sprites, and then woke up hungover as shit the next morning and were like, oh crap, we gotta design the main characters too. It wasn't really until Final Fantasy IV in 1991 and the advent of the Super Nintendo and Super Famicom where Square really started to solidify personality and aesthetics for the main party in Final Fantasy games. Understandably, there is a significant jump in quality between the character designs in the first 3 Final Fantasies and the likes of Cecil's clearly defined and badass Dragoon armor, Rydia's punky swept-over hairstyle, and Cid's hugely emotive grimace in battle. But Final Fantasy IV was very much in the transitional phase between the NES and the Super Nintendo, and Square was in the midst of deciding when and where they should start developing for the SNES and switch full-time away from the regular Nintendo. So, Final Fantasy IV character sprites are good, but then came Final Fantasy VI. Still, to this day, regarded by many as their favorite entry in the series, Final Fantasy VI is also one of the best-looking 16-bit games of all time. A massive leap in graphical fidelity and time spent on art allowed for not only amazing-looking characters with sprites with depth, shading, and personality, but also profile images in the menus that pretty closely resembled Yoshitaka Amano's original artwork for each character. Characters could now laugh, show disappointment and sadness, excitement or shock, and the beauty of Amano's work, a combination of swashbuckling high fantasy and steampunk, translated beautifully into a 16-bit world torn between magic and tradition and the advent of industrialization and coarse technology. It was a wonderful swan song for the artist who shaped the look and feel of Final Fantasy, and for Final Fantasy VII, he would pass on the reins to Tetsuya Nomura. And here's where things get a little weird, where 3D game development opened up all new possibilities for game character designs and resulted in short jackets and belts. Just so many short jackets and belts. Final Fantasy VII launched in 1997 on the Sony PlayStation and blew everybody away with its graphics, music, mature and deep storyline, and also its very liberal use of the word shit. And while the character designs, Nomura's first foray into the field, fit the steampunk feel of a world being drained of life by industrialism, there's just a lot of belts and a lot of muted colors, and the beginning of Tetsuya Nomura's love affair with short jackets. I still love Final Fantasy VII to this day. It was largely informative for my love of RPGs. It's the reason I got a PlayStation to begin with, and it holds a very special place in my heart. But the very heavily anime-influenced character designs with spiky hair and baggy pants, or lack of pants, and metal bits and pieces thrown onto everyone just kind of doesn't really do it for me, honestly. Cloud's combination of turtleneck, suspenders, hammer pants, and literal nuts and bolts attached to his pauldron come off as simultaneously try-hard and also kinda uninspired. And I know it hurts some people's feelings and it might even be straight up blasphemy, but I'm not done yet. We've got 2 short jackets on both Barret and Aeris, and I'm not sure how Barret is supposed to move or bend over or go to the bathroom while he's wearing that gigantic metal girdle around his waist. Tifa is wearing suspenders on a 4-inch miniskirt, and I really don't think that her problem is the skirt falling downward. And Vincent Valentine, who I know is everybody's male equivalent of a waifu, is like 62% belts and buckles. Final Fantasy VII was a very important and influential game, but man, the character designs were lacking on this one, y'all. And for a little short while, it kinda only gets worse from here. But yeah, Sephiroth still looks f***ing dope. Fantastic. Final Fantasy VIII dropped in 1999, and so did Squall Leonhardt, possessor of not only another short jacket and spiky hair, but 6 belts. If Cloud Strife was Tetsuya Nomura's testing the waters, then Squall Leonhardt is Nomura doing a head-first cannonball into his wildest dreams. Monochromatic in his look and personality, wielding a weapon that people still to this day can't really figure out, and surrounded by a host of other bland, plain-looking characters, Squall dotted his way through what's possibly my least favorite Final Fantasy game, the least inspired visually, and the result of being rushed out the door as fast as possible to maintain the momentum of Final Fantasy VII's popularity and sales. Zell has a short jacket too, and some Jinko shants. Quistis has a gigantic belt that doesn't really have any purpose, and a couple of wallet chains for good measure. Selphie is just wearing a dress, Irvine is just a generic cowboy, and all these people are supposed to be elite mercenaries on a mission to save the world. and they're barely dressed appropriately for a trip to Hot Topic. It's the culmination and distillation of all fashion in 1999, and I just don't really dig it. But then... oh my god! The absolute pinnacle of Final Fantasy character designs. The perfect marriage between chibi and realistic looks with boundless personality. Characters that feel as if they really live in the world they inhabit, and... okay, there's another half-jacket type thing, but look at this character design. And Zidane Tribal, for the most part, actually enjoyed life and didn't mope around all the time. Look at his vibrant, colorful style, his oversized gloves and boots, the frilly lace cravat with the semi-formal bow tie. And do you know why these characters look so great? Because Shuko Murase was the lead designer with input from Yoshitaka Amano, who came back and helped with conceptual designs before handing him off to the art team. As a main character, Zidane sets the tone for a fun, rollicking throwback to Final Fantasy aesthetics, a return to actual fantasy, and the promise of a fun story with highs and lows with what was then a more modernized narrative. You can instantly tell this dude is a swashbuckling pirate with attitude and a zest for life. Adalbert Steiner might be my favorite Final Fantasy character ever, and even though he's wearing armored shants, his constant disapproving scowl and his silly metal hat immediately tell you that this is a guy who takes himself and his job way too seriously. Vivi's comedically oversized hat and gloves and boots tell you that he's somebody who doesn't quite fit into this world, much less his own britches, and that he's a young, vulnerable character trying to convey more confidence and maturity than he has. He's literally a little kid wearing adult clothing. It's wonderful. Garnet's jumper is perfect for somebody who's traversing the world and is in need of something functional, and yet it still conveys her regal secret identity with the frilly undershirt. Final Fantasy IX's story deals with some heavy stuff, including purpose, the meaning of life and death, and love in the face of impending doom, but these are vibrant characters in a vibrant world that feels more alive and lived in than the previous two Final Fantasy games that came before it. It's perhaps the pinnacle of Final Fantasy character design for me, and it's followed up by... short jackets, suspenders on shants, wallet chains, and a dress made entirely of belts. Guess who's back, y'all? And it was apparently so repressed throughout Final Fantasy IX's whole production that he exploded all over Final Fantasy X. The one thing that Final Fantasy X has going for it is the fact that all of the characters are colorful. But nothing these characters are wearing is practical or makes any sense at all. Especially given that two of them spend a good portion of the game playing a sport that's entirely underwater. Like, this motherfucker is swimming in a hoodie. And this dude is swimming in some kind of, like, hip waders that hang loose, and he's wearing an upside down shoulder guard. Both of these things are basically made to slow his ass down underwater and probably drown him. They ran out of places to put belts on Auron, so they just kind of put one vertically down his, like, SWAT tactical collar thing or whatever. And don't even get me started on Lulu. What in the ever-living What is the obsession with belts, Nomura? And this lady's off-the-shoulder top is not going to stay on while she's fighting monsters and traversing the countryside. Take some of those belts and, like, throw them over her shoulders. What the hell? And then we make our way to something kinda normal with Final Fantasy XII. Akihiko Yoshida took over the character designs for 12, and he brings back a nostalgic kind of art style that harkens back to Final Fantasy Tactics. There's just something warm and comforting in his art style, and I loved it in Bravely Default too. But man, there is a mix of highs and lows in Final Fantasy XII. You've got Balthier, who looks great. He looks awesome. You can immediately tell that this dude is like a Han Solo type of swashbuckling sky pirate with style and attitude. The open heel shoes are really weird choice, but the shin guards are smart. The drip is functional while also being stylish as hell, and hip holsters will never not be cool. 10 out of 10, badass character design. And then you've got Vaughn, who's wearing a super short metal vest that defies logic and gravity just by staying on his body, and 87 pounds of armor on each leg. My guy, how are you going to protect the hell out of your legs and leave your vital organs exposed? and also make it so you can't climb 5 stairs or jog more than 10 feet without looking more gassed than Jamarcus Russell just getting from the huddle to the line of scrimmage. Ash looks weird with her ultra mini skirt and her big ass collar but no sleeves, and Penelope looks weird with her inflexible thigh-high boots and shoulder guards that make it look like she can't lift her arms more than 90 degrees. And Fran's wedding night lingerie and 9-inch heels are just absolutely absurd. Okay, look. Final Fantasy XII is a great game. It's like Star Wars meets Final Fantasy in a high fantasy setting, and it's a great return to form after 10's silliness. But man, there are some terrible character designs here that are almost all saved by how badass Balthier is. Almost. And then... God damn it, he's back. Okay, Nomura, you showed some real restraint here with Final Fantasy XIII, I have to admit. Maybe the absurdity of Fran's design in 12 kept you from edging the whole way through that game cycle. I don't know. You even snuck in a pretty great design with Zaj. I love the piratey jacket with the earth tones. I'm always a sucker for thigh holsters. He looks great. And you tried with Snow. Even though he looks like he should inexplicably live on a farm in Final Fantasy VII, I can dig the art style, and nothing here is so ridiculous that he looks like he shouldn't exist in this world. But then we get to the ladies. And Lightning is running around in possibly the shortest skirt in a Final Fantasy game to date, and I don't even know how she's supposed to run and fight in that. The super loose thigh satchel thingy isn't making anything better, and the one piece of armor that this intense, well-trained warrior is wearing is on her shoulder. Like, okay. If I was traveling in a party with Vanille, I would get so sick of the constant noise of all those beads that I would cast Faraga on myself and end it all. Fang actually looks pretty badass. I can get behind the flowy outfit and lack of armor if you explain it all away with her fighting style and that badass attitude. Overall, it's a step up for Nomura, honestly. All the characters are kinda boring, but at least they're not ridiculous to the point of being distracting. And then we come to Final Fantasy XV, and there's not really much to say here. It's 4 guys all dressed up in black leather pants running through the countryside complaining about how warm they are. Now, we all know that Final Fantasy XV was a mess. The game started out as a spin-off called Final Fantasy Versus 13. It was initially directed by my boy Tetsuya Nomura, and he and Roberto Ferrari actually did the initial character designs. The game's development was just troubled from the get-go, and it was taking them forever to make it. So naturally, they decided to rebrand it as the next main entry in the series. Yeah. The game basically started over in development, it switched engines, it switched directors, it underwent a ton of rewrites, and the result is a game that most people consider to be just okay. With character designs that are just okay. Like I said, it's 4 dudes all dressed in black, driving around in a Cadillac, in a world that's such a strange dichotomy of fantasy and real-world aesthetics and product placements like Coleman camping gear, American Express, and Cup Noodle that it makes Final Fantasy VII and VIII's worlds look seamless and natural by comparison. One thing I really do like about the character designs in Final Fantasy XV, though, is the red soles on everyone's boots. I don't know why. I just dig it. Also, Cindy is a f***ing ridiculous character design. Like, they had to squeeze in at least one ridiculous belt and a short jacket in there somewhere, right? I mean, they had to. And finally, we end things on the most recent addition to the Final Fantasy franchise, Final Fantasy XVI. And god damn it, they hit the mark. We're back to a more traditional fantasy RPG setting with castles and knights and inter-kingdom politics and the crystals being central to the story. Yoshi P took over the role of producer with the goal of turning the franchise around and making it the top RPG series in the world again. He assembled a great team of developers and artists, largely from his incredibly risky and incredibly successful reboot of the MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, and not least of all was artist Kazuya Takahashi. The concept and production art for the characters in Final Fantasy XVI harkens back to the art style of Ahiko Yoshida, mixed with a splash of Yoshitaka Amano, and I love it. The artwork translated beautifully into the game itself, and the result is a bunch of characters with style and panache, but functionality, and they look like they live in the world they inhabit. Muted colors, but with really clever accents and bits of flair that tell you everything you need to know about these characters, yet also not making them look silly or out of place in their world. Everybody has armor where they need it, where it makes sense. They have leather or cloth where they need it for flexibility, and there's no anachronisms anywhere on them. It's wonderful. It's peak Final Fantasy design, and it's my favorite art style since Final Fantasy IX. Thank you, Yoshi P and Katsuya Takahashi, for finally bringing the fantasy back into Final Fantasy and putting all the silliness and ridiculousness where it needed to be in the absolutely stunning and ridiculous battles between the characters and the forces in the world of Valisthea. And if I never ever see another outfit made entirely of belts or a f***ing short jacket again, it'll be too soon. Final Fantasy is a series that has had some real ups and downs when it comes to character design. But every franchise that's gone on for as long as it has or longer has had its share of questionable artistic decisions. Ultimately, the series continues to be timeless and enduring, and I hope everybody watching isn't too insulted by my criticisms and my good-natured ribbing. What is your favorite and least favorite Final Fantasy character designs? Sound off in the comments below and let's talk about it. Are you excited about the direction the series is going with Final Fantasy XVI? Will we ever see a remake of Final Fantasy IX? Jump onto the Space Castle Discord for an even more in-depth conversation. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and supporting Space Castle's continuing mission to explore the universe for all things nerdy. Be sure to share this video with a friend and come back for the next one. This is your Captain DT, signing off.